All right,
Recording in
so
progress.
we are recording. I want to welcome everyone, and I will continue to sort of monitor the waiting room while people are still joining us. But we wanted to go ahead and get started with Who's Your Customer Market Research for Tech Startups. We're delighted that you're here. And again, we probably know that you have a particular interest in this topic, which we would like to explore with you as we sort of progress through the slides. But first, we have a little bit of information about who we are, Arkansas Small Business and Technology Development Center. And when you say that as its initials, it can be a real tongue twister, ASB TDC. And I have found that the pause in between helps. Harrison and I are the T, Arkansas Small Business and Technology, the T in ASB TDC. And we're going to share a little bit more about our team and our counterparts in different parts of the state. But for our regular business consulting services, we have offices all across the state. And through these offices, which are embedded primarily at universities, as our hosts, we provide these startup services for everything you can imagine under the sun, from starting your business, figuring out what the best legal structure for the business is, through to financial projections, establishing your business model, like coming back to our consultants and talking to us about growth plans and different types of financing or access to capital. So it just really runs the gamut, and all kinds of businesses, all kinds of industry. And we are at the Lead Center. In the Lead Center, we have something like, I don't know, maybe 15 consultants or maybe a little less. And then I guess Fayetteville is also a larger office. And then some of our offices actually have one person in them. So it really just depends on the market. And, most of them are open almost like retail, where we're open from 8 to 5 and people can walk in. And we, of course, have a client intake system too, where anybody can call from an 800 number or, sign up through our link, which I'll share later, to actually become a client. So we have a sign up link so that you can get into the system. And I guess, Harrison, the next slide. That all of our services are free. So I want to be able to say that right up front. So if you want to work with me or Harrison or our counterpart, Catherine, we are a place to start. You can email me or Harrison both. The things that we're going to talk about today, can really help any type of business. And even though we specialize in the T, and I am funded by the Federal and State Technology Partnership Program, which is particularly designed to support small business innovation research grants. The people who will apply for small business innovation research grants would start with me. And so I'm hoping that some of you are potentially interested in SBIR or STTR grants, and that's the reason you're here today. Okay, Harrison. So besides me and Harrison, I mentioned Catherine, our counterpart in Northwest Arkansas. We do provide consulting, training, market research, deliverables actually, and commercialization strategies, among the other things that I mentioned. Okay. And I mentioned SBIR, just in case you're not familiar with the program. They call it America's Seed Fund. And the acronyms SBIR and STTR are usually what you hear, even though the Small Business Administration has rebranded them as America's Seed Fund. And that is really non-dilutive seed funding from the federal government to help de-risk technology-based businesses that are intended to be both high growth and investable. So in Arkansas, we have a lot of ingenious people creating amazing things, and we love this pathway to help support them with seed funding while they're in the early stages of development of their ventures. And so that is almost my full-time job, is to guide people to the funding and to help them with the grants and connections and training that they need to help grow not only their team while they're pursuing the early stages of their business, but also have access to the resources. So we are part of a greater ecosystem in Arkansas where we know a lot of the players in both resource providers and potential funders, and the connect and help provide the bridge or the connections for those and support our entrepreneurs and small business owners and our founders as part of their, part of their professional services team. Okay, so that's enough about those. So today we're going to cover, just the general concepts of entrepreneurship, why you're doing what you're doing. These 4 core questions we want to cover today that are related particularly to markets and market research. And then also we'll share some resources at the end, and I'll be providing links as we go, or I can follow up also, of course, with a recording link, and then any other links that we cover today that can be resources for you in the future. Okay. So are you ready to be an entrepreneur? I think that and we weren't sure how big our group would be, but we were going to run a little poll, but since we don't have such a big group, maybe y'all could drop in the chat. Would you be willing to drop in the chat whether you already have a business? So if you're already in business or have a business, can you just type yes in the chat since we have such a small group? If you can get 2, if you're not driving. Okay, Victoria says yes. Philip says no, but I know who Philip is working with. And anybody else have a company already? Maybe, I don't know if everybody can get to the chat from where they are. Okay. And then what about, well, okay, since not everybody can put in the chat, never mind. Stephen said yes. Okay, thank you. Stephen, your name is familiar. Do you mind saying what your company is? Maybe while Stephen is doing it, maybe Victoria too, if you don't mind just saying what your business is. And Tim works with entrepreneurs. Great. Same. Also, Tim, I do the same thing, but from my seat here at ASBTTC, I was also a judge for the Governor's Cup. Victoria's Sunrise Bookkeeping and Management. And Sean works with businesses and entrepreneurs from Apex in Kentucky. And Philip is with I-R at the University of Arkansas Fayetteville. Okay, so thank you for sharing that. Okay, so we won't spend as much time, I guess, on this, am I ready to be an entrepreneur? Again, because we have a small group and we just wanted to be able to tailor this more to who was in the room. But the next slide, one of the primary messages that we want to convey is that this is not something, oh, thanks, Stephen Tokol, pharmaceuticals at you. Okay, great. Okay, so that this is not something you do by yourself. But one of the things we did want to just cover briefly are some of the reasons why people do decide to turn their idea or their project or the passion that they have into a business. So some of the ideas that we hear often here at ASBTDC, and I'm sure that if you can relate to any of these, feel free to drop them in the chat, to bring your idea to life, to make a difference, to some people say to leave a legacy, to, be able to work with the technology that you love or make a difference and adding to the state of the art, to be able to run your own business, make your own decisions, to be able to retain ownership of your idea, to, have a team, to work with a team, create a team, engage in a wider community dedicated to similar goals. I love that one. Or some people just become a player on a bigger stage. There are many reasons why people decide to try to monetize or to enter a space. If any of these resonate with you, or if you would like to add any to these about why you do what you do, feel free to drop those in the chat. We're happy to see what's on your mind and why you're here today. Victoria said, differentiate the value of the solution and the idea. Okay. Harrison, do you have the next slide?
Yep.
I'm sorry. Oh, there we go. I thought I was in the wrong order. Where am I?
Oh, you're good.
Okay.
Victoria also said grow it and give other people jobs, which I think is a
Yeah,
very important goal as well. You know, you have to think about when you get to that point of hiring other employees, you know, this is entrepreneurship is a big deal, and you need to have a big reason why, because it's not only going to be your livelihood, but you could also provide livelihoods for others.
exactly. And so one of the reasons that we found this cartoon and put this in, we were kind of having fun with it when we created this, but in tech, a lot of times we see people who have ideas, but they are very careful about sharing their ideas, or they're not really convinced, or may have some limiting beliefs that they may never actually move forward with the idea. And so, of course, as you know, it's not just having a good idea, it's the ability to execute. And it's also, a lot of this is based on building a team and relationships. So what we find ourselves coaching on people very often, and when we're talking about market research today, but we're also talking about what it takes to build a company and relationships that are at the core of all of this. And it's not something that you really can do by yourself. So if you have an idea and you're hoarding it, or you're keeping it to yourself, or you're not sure you want to carry it to the world, one of the first things you need to do is realize who you need on your team and what kind of relationships you need to start extending yourself to bring your idea to life, to help bring your idea, or to solve a problem. So one of the big things we're talking about, and the reason we're even centered on market research today, is because we want you to be focused on solving a problem in the marketplace. And our tech clients very often have an idea, but aren't necessarily starting with what the need is, so much as what their research is, or what cool thing they've invented. If they're not a lab founder, if there's someone who is, in the community, or is, doing something in their garage, or just has a great idea from anywhere, that it's never too early to start building relationships, even if you don't know if you need them down the line.
Yeah, Karen, I would also add, it's one of the ways that uh, when you want to think about sharing your intellectual property, you want to share it smartly, right? You want to share it with people who can provide value to that intellectual property and or add value onto it. So, surrounding yourself with those people and the organizations, kind of like what we do here at ASBTDC, sharing that idea, not being afraid to share that idea in certain situations with people who can, again, like you were saying, Karen, can help bring that idea to fruition. And really building those relationships is can be so important, because you never know. I think we've both seen um, people, over the years who have built really fantastic relationships or really unique partnerships based on just chance meetings and just, really just unexpected circumstances. And uh, it's really come to help bring their own ideas to places that they never expected them to go.
Right.
And building, again, unique partnerships that they never would have expected to occur if they hadn't been open to sharing that idea, but also very cognizant of who they're sharing that idea with and who they need to be sharing that idea with in order to surround themselves with the support that they need
Right.
as they build their team and as they build out and interact with the ecosystem around them.
And in tech, of course, you want to protect your IP. And we, we always advise the non-disclosure agreements, and everyone works with NDAs. And by the way, everyone on our staff, simply by virtue of the fact that we've accepted these jobs as part of our job agreement and working at the universities that we work at, that we keep your client information confidential. And the NDAs are built in actually to our jobs. And that said, when we introduce you to people, we ask for your permission to share and any information. And also, we look to you to help lead us on your willingness to keep opening those doors and establishing the team. And Tim added, and it's a good point, that some of the teams he works with, that you should not have a solution in search of a problem, but very often that's where entrepreneurs start, is they start with the solution. And the next workshop in this series is going to explore a little further the concepts of customer discovery, like in a really abbreviated form, but why it's so important to talk to customers. So this first half is really market research. Who are our customers? What are the questions we want to answer about them? And then the second half, which is on May 2nd in a similar format, is really to expand on the idea of customer discovery and how do we explore the problem with them? Okay, so we're going to talk about that more in the next webinar. Okay, so so just again, talking about a little bit more about us, then we'll jump into the actual subject today, but Lab to Launch is what we call our tech services. And when we work with people specifically on their commercialization strategies, we talk about these things often. So this is part of our consulting practice. And just between us and the people in the room, if we hear somebody come in and say, if we say, well, who are your competitors, your potential competitors, and they say, I don't have any, that may be true, but very often, we may have to dig a little deeper and help them understand who is doing something similar, or if not similar, are there indirect competitors? And really what we mean by indirect a lot of times is they're using a different solution and they haven't thought of yours as a potential or something they could use. And so we're really, especially in startups, we're talking about helping change behavior. Like if someone doesn't already have that solution and they're using it, how do we convince them? Or how do we find out, more than convincing, is how do we find out whether they would actually use ours and pay for it? So these are just some basic questions we ask. And we want to make sure that if you are a tech, potential client here today, that that you are actively working on all of these pieces of your startup, and that especially if you start to pursue an SBIR, STTR, again, the non-dilutive federal funding, that you have a good handle on a lot of these basics already. And we can work with you on those if you haven't, but we just wanted to mention that Lab to Launch is really, we are looking for people who are at least aware and have started working on some of these problems. Okay, some of these questions. Okay, next. Oh, so if you're not working alone, but it does feel like you're taking a leap, we are asking you to consider that there is this whole ecosystem behind you, and that even though it feels like you may be out over the gap, that that you are taking a leap of faith, but we want you to look before you leap. And so we are going to talk about the 4 core questions today. What are the 4 core questions? Moving past to the next slide. What is the core problem that you are solving? And in marketing parlance, we talk about this in terms of like market need or market demand. So the question behind that is, what value are you creating and for who? So how do we start looking at that question? How do I know who has the problem, and how do I know whether there's a need there? One of the important things is, of course, to understand the industry and gathering information about the attractiveness of your opportunity. So analyzing the market helps you determine who's most likely to buy your product or service, and it allows you to determine demand and consider the key factors that you need to examine. and really understand the industry as well as competitors. So when we talk about talking to customers, we consider that primary research. So if you know the definition of primary research, it's the kind of research that is original research designed to get information straight from the source. It costs more to get, and sometimes you have to do it or hire it done. But it is one of the smartest first steps you can do to find and solve real problems for paying customers, talking directly with customers. And sometimes that's in the form of a focus group. Sometimes that's in the form of extended interviews. It's all primary research, but sometimes it's also a focus group followed by a survey to help quantify the data that you get initially through discussions with individuals. And the reason that this is so important is that you don't want to waste your time building products that your customer may not want or need. So next slide. So the really cool exercise that we have asked people to do, and let's just show that worksheet real quick. We share this with our clients, and we'd be happy to work through this on the pain points with anybody who is here today. If you wanted to offer a suggestion, oops, what do I see something that says Sabrina on my.
I'm just resharing it real quick.
Oh, okay. Harrison's running the slides, and I'm trying to keep an eye on the waiting room. Okay, so our exercise that we like to share is about, helping people think about addressing customer pain points. So this is part of the market research we ask you to do. And you're thinking of something that causes people a problem for product or service that may not just be for one person, but obviously is experienced by a large group of people, or could potentially be shared by others. So this, again, we didn't know how big of a group we were going to have today, but in sort of the spirit of teaching and learning together, does anybody want to offer a product or service that could potentially solve some pain points? And Harrison and I sort of rigged this a little bit where we said, well, if nobody volunteers anything, what about jar openers? So we were just playing, trying to come up with some kind of product that we could talk about that people have pain points about. Does anybody want to volunteer theirs? Like a particular, like where Harrison has the little line 7, row 7 says jar openers. Does anybody have an idea for a solution that's probably a product or a service, but that people have pain about? People have some things that they need, the problems that they need solved. Does anybody have anything they want to volunteer? I know that's awkward when you're not in the mindset yet to actually do a workshopy thing.
Feel free to come off mute if you want to.
Class after all. Tim says the OXO line of kitchen tools was a solution to a problem that people, okay, so I don't know what the OXO is, but okay, let's just go with the jar openers. So the pain points might be, I have arthritis. It's hard for me to turn the jar lid, right? It's hard, arthritis causes pain to open the lid. What are they doing today? I don't know, but yeah, Victoria, thank you. Many entrepreneurs know nothing but keep their pint. That's true. What are they doing today? What are people doing today? Uh-oh. I see another. People at UMS that are having trouble getting the Zoom link to work and can't join. Oh no. Stephen, thank you for that information. You have the link and it worked for you. Do you have access to those people that are telling you they can't get in? And would it be possible for you to send them the link that you got in on? I'm not sure what might have happened. We can always do this
See
again.
if we have anyone in the waiting room.
Okay. Oh, thank you for forwarding. That'd be great. If you have their emails, that'd be excellent. Okay, so what are they doing today? What are people doing today with the jar openers? How are people opening if their hands hurt? How are they opening? I know that in the old days, like my parents used to like run the lids under the hot water in the sink. Or Sean says, yeah, they're using those rubbery grippy things. And those are, if you have arthritis, that doesn't feel very good. Tim, getting someone else to open the jars for them, someone whose hands are stronger or younger or don't have arthritis. Exactly. So these are some of the things they're doing today. But let's say that we want to address that problem. What, and the last in column C, our solution offerings, let's say that we have a better way to do this. I mean, actually, one of my favorite jar lid openers is the one, I don't know if you've seen it, and I don't remember the brand name, but it's the one that has a rubber loop, and there's a handle, and the rubber piece goes through the handle, and you can tighten the rubber to fit the exact, size of the lid. And then you get leverage. I'm trying to use my hands. You get leverage with the handle because it helps, the physics help you open that lid with more strength than your hands would have if you were just trying to do it with the rubbery, grippy things. So for my money, the people who invented that particular jar opener that a friend told me about, somebody that has arthritis, that it actually works in a way that it gives your hands extra strength and even more than the rubbery grippy thing. So how do you end up finding those customers, the ones that need your particular solution? And what we're looking for in this research, and we're talking about exploring customer needs. Let's go back to the slide if we can. Harrison, is that we're talking about those pain points. So it's really important to be able to talk to them or observe them or collect enough information about whatever those pain points are, regardless of what solution you might have or what we're talking about. Okay, and then we also have us on that slide about problem validation questions. We just wanted to share with you if you hadn't seen. If you hadn't seen this particular worksheet, the problem validation questions are kind of interesting, and we'll share all these links later. Like I said, that the Board of Innovation has them where we're just looking at understanding the context of the pain points and building a set of questions where you are trying to find out, I hope everybody can see this, is, the who, what, when, where, how, and how much kind of questions. And they're process oriented. So a lot of times, especially in tech development, we're talking about solving some part of a process or a step in a process or a product that adds to the supply chain or that is part of the production of another product. So we see a lot of value in learning how to ask these questions and really having having our clients have meaningful discussions with a number of customers, not just, I know that my friends, we were talking about Ed LaHue at the Missouri SBDC. Ed just conducted a class where he asked entrepreneurs or would-be founders to do 21 interviews over 3 weeks. So talk to 7, then in week 2, come back and let me know that you've talked to another 7. And then in week 3, let me know that you've talked to another 7. Now, that may not sound like 21 customers, may not sound like a lot of people to talk to, but if you're starting a business, it may seem insurmountable. And how do I find the right people to talk to with these kinds of questions? Okay, let's go. I think I've belabored that point. And also why build and deliver this? Because it's vital to spend the time understanding who they are, learning what their pain points are, may discover other customer segments, other problems, or other uses. And learning market factors can delay or accelerate your actions. This is so interesting. And Harris and I have seen this happen in some of our startups too, where, entrepreneurs set off in a certain direction And then when they do this customer discovery or do, talk to more people about what their actual pain points are or how the jobs get done and all the different types of jobs or tasks, that the problem is very different than what they want to design or think they want to deliver. So one of our slides, our next slide, is the world famous, I don't know who came up with this originally, but I see it in a lot of presentations related to tech startups, is that we should help our clients fall in love with the problem and not your solution, because also your solution may change. So what we're really looking at is competencies, right? We are looking for our entrepreneurs and our clients to be able to address problems with their core competencies and be able to understand by really spending time with our customers. So let's talk a little bit about segmentation. Okay, so another red flag for us is that clients come in and we say, who's your customer? And they say, everybody. Everybody can't be your customer. So what does a segment look like? What are we talking about when we use the term segmentation? This again may be very familiar information for you, especially if you went to business school or took some business or marketing classes. But we hope that it might also be a nice refresher if you haven't thought about this in a while. So what do we mean by segmentation? We mean aggregating customers by their common needs. And those especially who would have similar responses to your offering. And why is that important? Because we live in America, we are a capitalistic society, and we start businesses to make money, to be profitable. So we're not talking about solving a problem that no one will pay for, and we're not talking about solving a problem for a very small group. Now it can be a niche, and that could be a smaller group than a mass market, but it's really important to know who you are creating value for. So who are they and how do we help? So we were talking earlier about primary research. So there is a difference between primary and secondary research. Secondary research is really available research from sources that have collected that data for their purposes, unlike the primary research, which is more expensive and it's specific to the information you need. Secondary research has been collected probably for another reason and may not actually address exactly what you need, but it will give you ballpark or it will give you some information. So both can be expensive. I will say if you have to create your own research, obviously that's more expensive when we actually do help. Some of our SBIR grants are directly addressing that. Is phase one research in an SBIR funded project is very much about primary research because it's proof of concept and validating a product or an idea, and using that research, using that money in the startup stage, in that the early stages, to collect that data. And that said, we have access, you have access to secondary research, but we also have access to some proprietary secondary research type databases that we like to make sure that our clients at ASBTDC know about. So we're going to show you, and Harrison's going to kind of walk you through some of the deliverables and some of the reasons why you would want some of those products if you're a client of ours. We, again, want to focus on, do you know what your buyer needs? Do you know how they decide to buy? And do you know what changes they'd like? So let's see. What else do we have? Different segments. So Harrison has some examples.
Yeah, absolutely. So just as an introduction for our market research, if you're not familiar with our services, we provide secondary research, as Karen mentioned. So we produce data, reports, infographics, maps, and other products, really, like they are deliverable products, to help our consultants serve all the different clients that we encounter here at ASBTDC throughout the state. So that includes both our, your normal mom and pop businesses that are opening up in various communities throughout the state. And that also includes tech startups who need who need their research tailored in a different way. So you see on the screen some different customer segmentation variables. So that the first one on the top left, demographic variables, that's really what our most of our clients that we encounter here at ASBTDC, that's what's most helpful to them because we're asking the question, who is your customer or who are your customers? You may be constrained to a specific geographic area. If you have, depending on your business or your service that you are providing, you may have a certain area that you are focused on, and it's very important to know who lives in that area and how they spend their money and what is important to them. What are their values when it comes to spending their money and investing in products and services? Um, so that's the top one. You can do some of that preliminary work yourself. There's a lot of great resources from the U.S. Census Bureau. If you go to census.gov, you'll be able to really dig into that data for certain areas that you're interested in. And then when we start moving around that list and getting to the psychographic variables in red there and behavioristic variables, these are more of the things that we can provide. We have access to proprietary databases that have more in-depth information on maybe, so that for psychographics, it may be how do people feel about certain lifestyle choices that are reflected in their purchases. If you are selling a food item, and it's an organic food item or vegan or vegetarian, or a certain type of food item, you may want to know what percentage of people in this area that I'm selling in are planning to sell in, how many people have this as an important factor in their lives and in their purchasing habits and in their diets. So there we have a whole library of variables like this for different values in terms of what people are spending money on, what they care about. The point is to build this into the business plan you're creating. If you're trying to, if you're presenting something to a lender and showing, this is um, understanding your market, understanding who you will be selling this product or service to. And then as you go forward and build marketing plans, you're building actionable things that you can use some of your own data as you start operating the business. But it's good to have that starting point. Who are you marketing to and how will you best reach them? What channels do you need to reach them on? Um, and how do you need to spend those valuable resources of yours in the most efficient and effective way? So that's what we try to look at with our market research. Um, and again, demographic variables are going to be very useful for your industry, for your businesses that are constrained to certain geographic areas. And then and we'll get further into this later in the presentation, but when we talk about a lot of the tech market research and research in support of federal funding applications like SBIR, STTR, as we mentioned earlier, a lot of that, it's not so hyper local anymore. And we start getting into national and global industry. We also have proprietary databases that really shine through in situations like that to show trends, to show the competitive landscape of the industry, how the industry is projected to change and grow perhaps within the next 5 or 10 years. And we'll get into that later as well, but this is just an overview. These are certain things that you need to be asking yourself about, the people that will be possibly using your product or service, buying your product or service, and that matters whether you are opening a restaurant or barber shop in a smaller community, or you are uh, operating a tech startup who has their sights set on the stars and is chasing federal funding. These are all things that you need to be considering.
So why is it important to understand the characteristics, the needs, and the preferences of the individuals or the groups? It looks like the UAMS folks are joining us. We've got 3 new folks. Hi, Ashley and Pam, and then the doc just joined us. Thank you. So why is it important to understand? Oh, I'm getting some feedback. Not sure where that's coming from. Okay, so why is it important to understand the characteristics, needs, and preferences of individuals or groups most likely to benefit from your solution? I'm just going to call it a solution now. I'm not even going to call it a product or a service. So here is really the textbook answer. So you really need to understand who has the power to buy or influence purchase decisions. And this depends, of course, on the product or service and your specific market. And I'm glad we have some folks here from the medical center, because they understand probably better than a lot of us do how complex those buying groups or the gatekeepers to the actual money or the ability to purchase a service or buy a contract or subscribe to something that's very difficult sometimes to find them and to have the access to them and help them make their purchasing decisions. They can be purchasing managers or procurement teams. We see a lot of times that especially our tech innovators have difficulty finding the actual buyer. A lot of times they can find the influencers, and they do understand that influencers can be the people who don't make the final purchase decision, but they do have a significant say in the choice. So, I used to teach like consumer marketing at the college level for undergrads and grads at some universities, 2 different universities in Southern California. And one of my favorite examples of the influencer in terms of like looking at who your actual customer is was the idea of how much power kids have. And children actually influence their parents' choice of so many purchases, and that parents, the statistics are sort of astounding at how much more parents will spend when their child is exerting pressure on that spending. And, I like to think that in our world, we're looking at other influencers. Let's say we need docs, or we need a group of doctors, or administrators at hospitals to be able to help influence whether or not our invention gets selected or gets used in their world. That can be a real challenge and a real chase. But it's critical that if you are someone here today who's a researcher or you come from the academic world, it's critical that you really understand these business to business relationships and the importance of helping establish those. And even if you do end up adding like a business developer to your team, or a vice president of sales, or someone who actually helps establish those partnerships and open up those relationships and, solidify the contracts and those, and the partnerships, that even if you are the chief science officer, you're still going to need to understand how that works, because you are going to need to be able to help direct those activities by the people on your team. So it's important to understand the roles that all of the different potential buyers play, like influencers, purchasing managers, salespeople, customer service representatives. Sometimes those people play a critical role in guiding a purchase decision. And then in complex business to business sales, sometimes there's a team of decision makers with various roles and levels of influence. So understanding those power dynamics in individuals or groups is essential to crafting your marketing strategy and making sure that you know who your stakeholders are and how you're going to accomplish, those gaining those inroads. Okay, enough said. Next slide. So that we're just talking, about the research, getting closer to your customers, segmenting them, understanding who your buyer is. And then, of course, one of the most critical pieces in those 4 questions that we talked about exploring today, just to kind of give you a refresher and get you in this mindset, is the sales piece. So how many of your customers are willing to give you money? Oh, wait, you mean that we have to get them to pay us? Boy, don't we wish that we could just invent wonderful things that solve many of the world's biggest problems and not have to worry about getting paid for them. I wish it worked that way, but alas, it does not. So so I say that Harris and I, this is where we get called into action a lot of times when we work with our clients, is we're trying, as the market research team, and also me as the SBIR STTR contact at ASB TDC, we're trying to help you understand the industry. We're helping you understand who your customer is. We're helping you ask and answer those questions. And we're helping you sort of look at industry and the state of the art or state of the science data that can help inform your project. So, let's see. There we go. Next slide.
Yeah, so as I mentioned a little bit earlier, so what we provide is secondary research. So again, we're not providing the primary research in terms of, doing those customer discovery interviews, survey data, anything like that. But we are providing valuable secondary research. And it comes in a few forms. The first bullet point you see there says market potential and consumer spending data. This is directly tied to our mapping software that we use for that demographic information. So the market potential is basically just the total spending of on a certain product or service in an area. And we have that for, right now we would have it for 2023, as well as a projection for 5 years in advance in 2028. And the consumer spending would be the total amount spent per household on that product or service. So what we do is we directly, I'll get into it in the next slide. Again, demographic information, an overview of the population that lives in a certain area that you're interested in. And that information is also going to include things like median household income, um, disposable income, and again, a lot of data on how they spend money and what they spend it on. Industry financial benchmarks, which may be very important for our tech startup clients, to have information on, what can you expect in this industry? We'll get into the TAM, SAM, and SOM later, your addressable market share. But what can you expect out of this industry? How much volume is at what volume are people making money in this industry, and how big of an industry is it, and how much of a share can you reasonably expect to attain, and who else is who are your big players in that industry, and what are they doing? Who's getting capital injections? Who is getting funded, but from various sources? Who's getting investments? And then the last one, industry and sector trends, ties into what I was just saying, but where can we expect this industry to be in 5 or 10 years? Um, so I will quickly go through. This doesn't apply as much to tech research, but it still can. So generally what will happen is if you work with a consultant at ASB TDC, you'll have conversations with that consultant to determine your trade area. And sometimes you will have multiple trade areas. So just as an example of what we do on our mapping software is, we have at the top left a radius, a certain amount of miles from a certain location. So if you have an existing business, for example, that location, that center point will be your brick and mortar store. And we can build a radius out from that. We can also do a drive time, as you see to the right of that, which is, like it says, this is the amount of time. This is a 5 minute drive time from downtown Little Rock. This is what you could reasonably expect, the area that you can reasonably expect customers to come from, um, if you can expect them to drive 5 minutes for your product or service. And the last one is a standard geography, which may be most useful in tech situations because those are the most large scale. This can include a city limit. This can include a county, multiple counties. We can take the entire state of Arkansas. We can take multiple states. If you have a product that you expect um, to if you expect to target a certain region with your product, we can pull multiple states. We can do the entire Southeast. We can do the US as a whole if you need. So these are just examples of a starting point for pulling that demographic information. These are the different areas that we can mix and match to pull that data from. And the data will reflect people who live within these territories. So next, just as an example, we mentioned market potential and consumer spending already. So if you come to ASBTDC looking to start a restaurant, your market potential, we have a whole library of variables that we can pull from, that we can make a custom report for you. And this will give you that information that's really useful in those business plans, marketing plans, and so on. Anything that you need to either present to someone to obtain funding or to use internally to build the most efficient marketing plan for your business and understand the landscape that you're operating in. So our examples for market potential, which again represents about how many households pay for a certain product or service. So you might want to look at how many people within this trade area went to a family style restaurant within a certain time frame or spent a certain dollar amount at a fast food restaurant within that time frame. And we break that down also into what is their spending on breakfast, what is their spending on lunch and dinner and snacks, so at different times of day. So again, there's a lot of variables that we have at our disposal that we can plug into for your business, we can plug into your business and marketing plans. And then consumer spending, again, gives you a dollar amount. How much was spent total and as a household average in that area over a year? So again, you might want to see what's this total spending on dinner in this area? What can you expect from an average household? What can you expect them to spend on a certain meal, breakfast, lunch, or dinner? Or how much can you expect them to spend at a food truck versus a brick and mortar restaurant? And then the last bullet point there is traffic counts, which we have some data that we're able to put on a map and show you, what are the busiest intersections in your area? What is getting the most amount of traffic? So this can be very helpful if you're deciding on a few different locations to place your new business. Or if you just want to know, where is the traffic heaviest in your area? We can provide data for that as well. And then this is an example of another product that we can give you. This is an infographic. So it just pulls information from those same variables. It's just put in an easier to digest format. So this is a dining out infographic, as you see on the map there. This is an example of our big standard geography. This is the entire state of Arkansas. And to the right of the map, you see some basic demographic information for the entire state. And then as we go down, bottom right, spending, average per household on different meals in different settings, different types of restaurants. We have fast food and takeout, and then we also have full service restaurants, for example. Um, so this is an example of a visualization that we can provide as a data tool um, for you to use in your business and marketing plans. This next one is an example of what we would call a competitor map. We can provide competitor maps and listings of a certain type of business in your chosen trade area. So again, this may be very useful if you're looking to open a business you're opening a brick and mortar business in a concentrated urban area, and you need to know how many potential competitors would I encounter in this area? What is the landscape like? So that's how we do it for, just any general entrepreneur who comes through our doors and wants to open a business. We can show you what that competitive landscape looks like. Now, to if we want to move on to tech startups, we scale that up, right? You want to know the competitive landscape in a national or global industry. We also can provide information on that. Um, so also have covered most of this. One thing I want to point out on this slide is um, we have that psychographic information, which again is kind of that behavioral data on the values of customers in a certain area. What are they interested in terms of um, health, food, lifestyle, um, media consumption? What matters to them? We have information on that. And then that last bullet point you see there, we have access to this tool called Tapestries from Esri. This groups customers into certain profiles or personas that can show you what percentage of a certain persona could you expect to find in your trade area. And they go into great detail on how you can expect this group to spend their money, again, what's important to them, and other demographic attributes. That is another thing that I think you can explore a little bit on your own for free on Esri's website. It's ESRI. They have a zip code lookup tool that when I'm done talking, I can get a link to and put it in the chat if anyone wants to check that out. And this is another infographic. This would be our psychographic information relating to food. So again, if you're looking to start a restaurant in an area and you want to know, well, what percentage cares about a healthy lifestyle, or who regularly eats organic foods? Is this an important thing? Is locally sourced an important thing? These can directly tie into your operation choices as you start and continue to build that business. So I'm going to go a little off of the restaurant topic for this one and just go more into the tech side of things because they're really, you can ask the same questions, right? What are the industry risks? Are there current articles I can read about? What's driving profit? And what can I expect the industry to look like 5, 10, 15 years in advance? These are things we can provide for restaurants, and these are things we can provide for something like for a technology in the healthcare industry, for example, or in biosciences, we can provide this kind of industry information because we have access to databases that log this information, track it, uh, package it into easy to understand documents. We have access to this data for things, for not for everything, but for a lot of pretty niche industries that you may not expect. Um, we have a lot of information at our disposal.
Harrison,
So ties into, sorry.
I'd like to add to that, especially since I do know we have some tech people here and some researchers or people in the medical professions too, that when you're looking at these questions, again, like Harrison said, that you're not sure, you obviously you can do some research on your own, you can start to hunt and peck, but if you need us as a sounding board to help you further develop your research questions around your market, we are happy to open the door and have like a two-way discussion. Like, I think I'm looking for this, but this is what I know about it. Can y'all help me dig a little deeper? And so that's really what we do. And we find, yeah, we find that very often our researchers will come to us and go, here is what I think the problem is. And here is where I think the customers likely are. But can you help me drill down? Because of course, as researchers, they're used to looking at scholarly articles and staying up with the state of the science, right? And the state of the art of the science. And, researching, publishing and all that. And we know that you're close to that information, but we're trying to help bridge that gap to the market information. So when you hear us talk and use terms like commercialization strategies, all of this, the market research and the digging around for additional data is part of that commercialization strategy service that we offer. So we feel like when we enter into a relationship with a new client or somebody who is an innovator who wants to learn how to do this, and they really think that there's commercial value or potential for their research, and they are, for example, going to pursue or want to pursue the SBIR, the Small Business Innovation Research Grants, it's important for you to be equipped with that data and that information to understand your market potential and to be not only informed but convinced, because the more confident you are in the data that you have going forward with a grant proposal, the more convincing you will be as a person that the US government would want to invest in or invest in your team to help bring that idea to market. So sorry, I just wanted to add that little spiel about technology consulting. Okay, keep going.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we provide for technology clients, again, it's secondary research, but it includes really detailed market size information and projections. A lot of times we can get pretty specific with breaking down a market into, what can you expect out of different sectors of this market? What can you expect out of different applications? Or different uses for a certain type of product. If you look into biosciences, that maybe, we have tables sometimes that we're able to pull that show, what is the market size for each specific application of a certain type of material that's being produced. And then we can also look at the competitive landscape, as I mentioned earlier. What are the major players in this industry? Also, what are the recent investments? What are other startups in this space, and what are they doing? What are they doing differently than you might be doing? And this information can help you differentiate your own business from the others that are already popping up and established in this area. Um, and then the third thing is recent product introductions, research, and patents. This is just anything that we find that we feel may be helpful. Again, we do a lot of searching around. We look through, we have access to Statista, which is a statistics aggregator. They have information on a ton of different topics that they source from some of the things they source from are going to be paywalled, and you may not have access to that otherwise, and we may not have access to that otherwise. So that's a great tool for finding some interesting data points that may be useful to plug in for your applications for federal funding, right? Um, and then we also sometimes will provide a binder with we pull from all these sources to provide a little narrative within the binder. But we also attach, when we can, peer-reviewed research that we feel is relevant. If it's something that, if researchers are very busy, and if this is something that maybe they haven't had time to do the searching for and find this particular document, maybe you have, but we'll include it anyway, just as a courtesy to say this is something that you may be interested in looking at further. Um, we do that for a ton of different things. There are trade associations for different industries who produce regular reports. So we'll also pull from those at times. So just to, I guess, tie all this together, what matters from this, right? And why would you be doing all this searching, and why would you come to us and have us provide this information? Well, it's to plug things directly into your applications for federal funding. A lot of this data are things that these federal funders really want to hear. They want to know that you understand the demand for your product. You understand what else is going on in this industry. You are on the cutting edge of your industry, and you want to be able to prove that with this information. And then obviously a big thing to also know is, what can you reasonably expect? What kind of market can you reasonably expect? And Karen, if you want to go into the Tam, Sam, and Psalm a little bit more, but this is definitely something that we aim to provide answers for when we
Yeah,
provide research for tech startups.
right. And while you were talking, Tim posted in the chat that we were talking about he was Lean Canvas, we referenced Lean Canvas, yes. And our next workshop on May 2nd is going to introduce some of the basics of Lean Canvas. And there are other training programs where people deliver Lean Canvas in greater detail, but we just kind of want to touch on some of the, basics. But he said that they use Lean Canvas and design thinking with elementary school kids and help them do their research and make products to meet needs. And he said even to understand how they were going to make a profit on items, and that the kids were really able to use the tools. And I answered, that's awesome, because, and Tam, this is going to make sense in a minute. I think it's really awesome, because I think that as adults, sometimes we are hesitant to try these tools, or we may not even be aware of them or why we need them. And so Lean Canvas is an example of a way to simplify business planning. And it's literally a one-pager that you use. And I'm going to show that at the end of this slideshow, just to sort of introduce the concept if you haven't heard of Lean Canvas before, because it's not something you run into in your everyday life. It's very specific to business startups. But also these concepts of TAM, SAM, and SOM, they're so well known in the sales world. But if you do not run in the sales world, or you don't know this language of business, this may be totally new to you. What is the total addressable market? Why do we call it TAM? Obviously, what is SAM? SAM is the second ring, the green ring, the serviceable available market. So as we go from the wider circle to the smaller circle to the smallest circle, really what these terms are designed to do is to help you understand, for your planning purposes, like how big it is out here, the whole universe, the total market. Then SAM, still smaller, is that portion of the market that you can acquire based on your business model. And then literally SOM, and I'm stressing SOM, is the percentage of SAM that you can realistically capture. Okay, so at some point, if you're an entrepreneur just entering this space, you're going to be thinking, how do I know my TAM, SAM, and SOM? How am I going to make estimates about what we can realistically capture as part of our business model? And the answer is that you need to be able to do that. And if you don't know how, you need to learn how, or you need to hire it. Or if you're working with us, we may be able to bring in some business type folks, maybe some MBAs or some students or fellows in some of the programs at some of our universities, who might Or we can send you to another program where you can really deep dive this by going into I-Core program, which uses Lean Canvas, or some of these other accelerators where you have to learn these business metrics and learn how to calculate them, even if you didn't go to school for an MBA. And the reason is because any funder, whether it's the federal government wanting to give you seed money for, SBIR type money for innovation research, or it's a bank and you're seeking a debt financing or a loan, or if it's a venture capitalist, or if it's even friends and family that you're trying to raise money from, and somebody's going to write a check, it's really important that they know that you understand your market's potential and your ability to achieve it. So you will become familiar with the terms, but you won't stop there. Okay, let's keep going. So we wanted to give you an example of, and we were trying to think of something techie, and we just pulled this out of nowhere. How about lab grown meat? That's kind of a cool subject. And believe me, we are total nerd. We nerd out on this stuff. And I say nerd in an affectionate term, because when Harris and us go digging for some of this research or trying to understand our clients' tech business models, we really enjoy learning about all the things that are happening in the lab, or all the things that are happening as, drug developers on the medical side will call it the bench, from bench to bedside, from lab to launch. And what are our entrepreneurs who are tech oriented really working on? And lab grown meat is kind of an interesting topic. So Harrison found this particular chart, just to give you an example of some of the stuff we can dig for. The low growth, medium growth, or high growth is the projection of the market size over, let's see, it says 2025 to 2030, over the next 5 years. And you wouldn't believe that this kind of information that's so arcane is really available and that somebody is looking for it. But sometimes we get these requests. And so what we're looking at are things like market size. What is market size? Market is the size of the current market in millions of dollars, generally speaking, and the expected growth rates. And sometimes that can be both in the US and in regions in the US and also worldwide. So the other thing we look at in market size is, and sometimes we can obtain this information, is what are the causes behind the trends that are affecting the market and its growth. And another question we might look at is, like, on a yearly basis, how much of X, whatever it is, like in this case, lab grown meat, is sold in the US and worldwide, and what is the average cost for lab grown meat, either at the wholesale or the retail? Not sure, probably be wholesale. Okay, so then the next sort of metric might be competitors. The questions are, what are the details of the leading companies in the lab grown meat space or suppliers to that industry? So we're looking at things like products, the geography, funding. Harrison mentioned this earlier, the actual funding or investment received in that area by other companies who are doing this, cost and revenue figures, details of the companies currently doing something similar, if we can get to it, because a lot of times, if they're not a public company, it's hard to get their information. There are some proprietary databases that have some of that private company information locked down. PitchBook is one of those. PitchBook is good for understanding the ins and the insider information about private companies. And then also sometimes for competitors, we're able to look at production volume in tons, for example, if it's something material, or market share or revenue. And then now, what about total audience profile? Why would I need that? What are we looking at there? That would be things like the socioeconomic status and age profile. What percentage of those people in the US and worldwide? Again, when we're talking about tech data to support a commercialization strategy, a lot of times we're just talking about the potential. So we want to describe the potential, even if we're only going, again, remember if we're going for the littlest circle of those that we actually can capture, that we talked about earlier. So also under target audience profile might be the profiles of suppliers. So what would be an example of that? Like sometimes we see our entrepreneurs like looking for somebody that they can partner with to help test their or validate their technology. And so sometimes if we're talking about target audience for a tech client, we're even just talking about one company or potential partner or a lab or someone that we can help get information about. It could be a single partner. So this really runs the gamut. The problem validation is about access. So what percentage of the customer profile would have consistent access to your offering or something like it, a competitive offering, or do not have consistent access to it. Money, how much do families spend, or how much does this particular segment spend, how much they spend on related supplies. And then time, what is the average length of time to do X, right? And then partnerships and business to business customers, we can look at things like volume and usage. And I think Harrison, I don't remember, you still have an example of maybe some of those things that you've looked at where we're trying to understand for a client or help them find how much someone in that space, how much their customers are already using that, or what they're able to produce in terms of volume. So let's say it's like, I don't know, biofuel for airplanes. Somebody was talking about that yesterday at the Governor's Cup about the, I believe they were talking about the, somebody who it was the jet, something about the jet, the gas that jet engines use. And if we needed to find the volume of a particular kind of biofuel that aerospace or airplane manufacturers, or I guess even airlines, are purchasing each year, what is the size of that market? Oh, thank you. Tim said using ag waste it was ag waste to generate jet fuel. Thank you. He was there and he was listening better than me. It was jet fuel. And so somehow we need to come up with that data, right? And so we hunt until we find it, or you help us find it, because we are honing the idea and looking for that as we can, and iterating the data and getting closer to what you really need. Okay, so what's our next slide? So what market data do our tech clients typically need? When we supply industry data, for example, we are looking at who the major players are. And sometimes it's not the major players that our tech clients are looking for. They might be looking for a mid-range company or a mid-range player, or let's say it's a company in the mid-range who would be able to acquire their technology. That's a good list to have. We can dig until we help you find that. So don't ever be afraid to ask, and drill down. And then on a smaller scale, who are the other startups that have received, like we talked about earlier, an injection of funding, or have introduced a product that may directly or indirectly compete with yours? And then new product development or trends. Oh, we added that because we also like to keep track of the macroeconomics. For example, we have a client in Northwest Arkansas. I'm sure some of you know the company, but they have won a lot of SBIR money to build it's an ag solution that helps keep herbicides from drifting. And so you apply this polymer-based liquid on, the idea is that you apply it on top of the crop, on top of the herbicide, to protect the crops and to keep it from seeping into like the water supply, or drifting over to the neighbor's crops or other things. But the technology is based on solving the herbicide problem. And then this legislature in the state of Arkansas is talking about banning the use of that herbicide altogether. So that would be an example of a macroeconomic impact that is something that you're not in control of, but that could be, that one in particular is regulatory. That's an example of regulatory where it can totally impact your business model, and then you have to completely pivot or find another use for your technology to be able to find a productive use of the technology that isn't being impacted by one of those macroeconomic factors. So, and all of these are really important, in terms of the environmental factors. Economic factors could be huge. Like if people have disposable income, and we were talking about consumer markets, if unemployment is low and people have jobs and they're able to spend freely and they're not in the middle of a pandemic, an economic trend can actually work to your favor. Or even if you remember how many businesses cropped up during the pandemic because our behavior changed. So many responses in the marketplace because of these external factors. So we have access to some of the trends. We look for those articles. We can pull some of the industry. They're like little booklets, ebooks almost, that we'll be tracking the trends and saying what's hot right now or things to look out for, or concerns that may be scattered throughout the industry. So we just wanted to make you aware that that's, again, part of what we're really trying to dig for to help our tech clients, because we're the T in ASB TDC. Okay, Harrison, back to you.
Yeah, and this last slide here, again, as I mentioned earlier, what we do for tech market research a lot of times is we search for answers. Sometimes we can't answer your questions one-to-one exactly how we would like to, but we search around for it and try to provide as much information as we can around that original question, to where hopefully with some more information, or with what we provide, you can kind of triangulate the answer that you're looking for. So part of the way we do that, is just we try to provide this, information about the state of the industry, the state of the art, right? Again, that can be scholarly articles, peer-reviewed research that we're able to find. Special publications really refers to, they might be, white papers from researchers. They also might be trade association reports. So there's a lot of different sources that we're trying to pull from, and that we try to put into, again, what our binders that we provide are kind of a narrative. We pull information from each of these sources. We reference everything. We'll have bullet points throughout the binder, with snippets of information, and then references, and then we'll have a section that we call our annexes, which are these full documents that if we find that if we reference them in the binder and we think that the full document would be of use to you as a researcher, as a entrepreneur, in this project, we will add those as well. We will provide as much information as we can without trying to just slap everything onto the table. We try to be deliberate about what information we do and don't include, but we also like to provide options, and sometimes we will provide extra information to defer to you as the subject matter expert, because we're working on these projects as researchers from various points of familiarity with these topics. We're learning a lot on the way, to providing you with this information. So again, we also like to have conversations with you as we're pulling the information, before we pull the information, so that we can get a better handle on what exactly it is that you're looking for, and you can provide us with some insight as well, on how you already know that this industry works, or what you already know as a researcher. Because again, you are going to be the subject matter expert. We are going to try to meet you where you are as best we can, provide information that we have at our disposal, that we understand will be useful, and provide you with those answers in the best way that we can. So these are three of the ways that we do that, including this extra. You might think of it as kind of some bonus content, right? That we'll provide to you. It's just if you want to dig deeper into a certain aspect, we try to provide this. And some of these, sometimes you will encounter, um, if you do some searches, sometimes you'll encounter an industry report that some company is selling online for, $4,000 or $5,000. And while we're not always going to have access to that exact report, I think where we provide a lot of value in terms of market research is that sometimes, and I would even venture to say most of the time, we're able to provide some information that you would have otherwise had to pay several $1,000s for that single report. And again, that's just one report. And we're able to, because we have access to certain databases, we're able to search around. We're even able to communicate with the people who run the databases and ask, would you ever consider doing a report on whatever industry? If they don't have that information. So we've had examples of that too, where we've reached out to databases that had a lot of niche information, but didn't have a certain report that our client was looking for, and we were able to get that in their queue. So we also have those relationships. Again, it all ties back into, looking for that assistance, knowing the ecosystem around you as a researcher and as an entrepreneur, launching or operating a tech startup, right? Because it's all about those relationships. So we have that as well, with, all of our consultants, maintain warm relationships with the lenders, banks, to really have a handle on um, what our clients need to do in order to have in order to produce a successful loan application or successful business plan and marketing plan. And the same principle is true as we work with our tech innovation clients. Understanding the industry, the ecosystem around. I know Karen does a ton of work maintaining those relationships with other organizations that can provide assistance, with all of the entrepreneurial support organizations in our region and nationally. And we try to do the same on our market research team in maintaining those relationships with the data companies, the companies that run these large databases with proprietary information, so that so that we can at least really like leave no stone unturned when we're searching for this information. So again, we may
Here's
not be able to get there 100%, but um, we have a lot at our disposal that we're willing to use, and relationships that we're willing to leverage to get as close as we can. Yeah, Karen.
Oh, sorry, but while you were talking, it reminded me that for those folks who had to come in late, that you may be thinking, well, this all sounds great. How do I get access to our time and some of this data? At ASB TDC, I'll just reiterate for those that weren't able to hear it, our services are free. You do need to become a client of ours and be actively engaged in a small business operating in the state, a for-profit business operating in the state of Arkansas. That's not as hard to do as it sounds, but if you don't have an LLC or a C Corp, or you're thinking that you might want to take your research, for example, out of the lab into the marketplace, all of this help that you can get in the ecosystem comes from being a small business entity, even if you're not fully operational yet. You are licensed to do business. You're beginning the process of formation and assembling your team and figuring out how to fund beyond bootstrapping it yourself, how to build a small business from your idea. And so I just want to make sure that those who came in late understand that you can get in touch with any ASB TDC office, if depending on where you are in the state, and start with your counselor there and sign up to become a client. Or if you're in Central Arkansas, you can get in touch with me. And if you're a tech client, I can help you. If you're not a tech client, we would of course direct you to a regular big business consultant who works with, all types of businesses. So just wanted to say that again. So if these reports are expensive to produce, these market research deliverables are expensive to produce. But we're a quasi nonprofit, quasi-public nonprofit organization. And that is the beauty of sort of our ASB TDC market offering ourselves, is that we are like consultants, but we don't charge $250 an hour to help you. And we love that we are working under these grants from the Small Business Administration and others that allow us to do that, because that makes us, helpful to startups, because who wants to pay $5,000 if you don't have to, but you get a lot of value from this information. And we can also help you interpret it and understand how to use it. So I just wanted to sort of reiterate that. So the next section, we were talking about the 4 core questions, and we've kind of gone through the market need and segmentation and understanding more how to quantify who your customers are, and maybe the size of the market and the potential. So the last sort of core question we wanted to ask, using our business terms, is what is the value proposition? And I sort of put that under the category of branding in a broad sense. It's sort of under the broad umbrella of branding and why. So if you're not super familiar with this, I just wanted to raise it, not as part of the lean canvas. It is one of the major components of the lean canvas, but just for your own education, if you're just not familiar with the term, again, because you haven't taken business classes, or you may need a refresher. What is the value proposition? It's really what you can do better, cheaper, faster, and how your offering will appeal to your buyers or your ideal or target customers, versus the other offerings. And so, so here are some, and these are positioning statements, but they help drive the essence of what a value they help illustrate the essence of what a value proposition is. And so I just grabbed some of these off the internet and thought they might be useful for us today. Is, what is unique or, of relative benefit to that customer? So Uber, why would you choose one driving service over the other? Uber says they're the smartest way to get around, but if you can Uber or Lyft or something else, even an old-fashioned taxi, the value proposition that's embedded in Uber are all of the things they do to address the problems they have solved for their customers. And there's a lot that Uber does. And there's a lot, by the way, Uber's value proposition has changed over the years as they've gotten feedback from their customers and learn more about their actual customer segments. Business customer is very different from a local or resident customer, right? If you're a rideshare service. And so a business customer might have different needs, and you might redesign something about the delivery of your business model if you're Uber. And they found, I don't know if y'all remember this, but Uber in the early days had you paying like based on cash or a credit card, and you had to still take some way to pay out of your pocket or out of your phone or something. And now it's all done through the app. Thank God. I remember those early days, but they fixed that problem because they realized that the value proposition for moving forward to make payment and make the transaction easier and speedier and more convenient, faster, all those things, would be to work on the payment system involved in the value proposition, right? So that's part of the offering. DoorDash says we have an extended customer base. That means that we also have accurate delivery, and we're easy, cheap, and fast. But why DoorDash versus Uber Eats versus Grubhub versus Bite Squad and all the others? Don't know. Sometimes a value proposition is just like beauty. Beauty's in the eye of the beholder. The value proposition, or what I find valuable, depends on my perspective and my needs, right? Which one of these I would choose versus another one. And that's a very selective sort of experience that every customer has. And I'm using just, familiar companies just to kind of make the point, but the Apple iPhone, not just Apple products, but the iPhone, has said in the past that the experience is the product. That probably raises something visceral for people in the group who understand what Apple's value proposition or what Apple's brand is all about, and why the experience is almost more important than the actual tool that they created, the design of it. And then Domino's, hot, fresh pizza to you within 30 minutes or it's free. When I pulled it up, I laughed because I don't know how long Domino's has been around, maybe since the 1980s or 1990s, but who knew that it was important at one time that hot, fresh pizza be delivered to you within 30 minutes or it was free. That was their value proposition. Is it still? I don't know. But I had a fun little link from Investopedia about value propositions, just for something you can explore later. So a couple of slides we just want to share with you real quick, and we are kind of getting down to the end of the kind of coverage today of the things we wanted to cover. But again, in the tech space, I just wanted to share with you that a lot of times when you create a new product or you start to find your market, you put a website up because it becomes kind of like, the electronic or digital brochure, but and it's also a way people can buy from you. And, website is supposed to be functional and do other things. But one of the really important things that our tech users have figured out in Arkansas is that they put the value proposition right up front. So AppGrab is made by Lapovations, which has had SBIR seed funding as well as investor rounds. And they've been doing a great job and they continue to grow, but they just put the words right up front: more reliable, less invasive laparoscopic procedures. And don't freak out about the picture. I know it's weird, but those are the suction cups on somebody's stomach. And that it is an awkward photo. It's a little weird, but the AppGrab, that's what it does. And so they've done a good job of sort of helping establish what business they're in. And they've got the name of the product and they've said what it does. The value proposition, they hope, and they're betting on this, that it's more reliable, less invasive, help for laparoscopic procedures. And of course you learn more. So they're addressing back to the original exercise we did. We talked about addressing pain points. So they have successfully addressed the pain point of surgeons who perform laparoscopic procedures like this. And what's our next one? Let's go through this. Vascogenics. We were talking earlier at another meeting about one of our very successful young MBAs, who was Masters in Finance, who had the idea for this and was able to put together a team that ultimately became a company, and they have found a real and significant market for that device, which provides, and I'm reading it now, accuracy, speed, control, value proposition, which are everything. If you dig a little deeper down into the blue text, the blue box, they're everything when performing interventional procedures. And if you're, I'm assuming because they came up with a really great name, Vascu, that has to do with cardiology, which means you're performing heart surgery. And so everything is packed into this, just their homepage. So these are useful exercises, I think, just to understand what we're talking about, value proposition in the brand and conveying that value in a meaningful way. Next one. I mentioned Cellulite earlier. This is the polymer product that I was mentioning that reduces the herbicide drift. And it's literally that big gallon or 5-gallon jug of liquid. And how it works is right up front. Reducing vaporization and increasing its adherence to plants. And now they didn't dig any deeper into the value proposition, but why is that valuable? I think a lot of farmers would know right away what that means for them. It means a healthy crop. It means, avoiding potential lawsuits from the neighbors who, whose crops get some of their herbicide, inadvertently, or, because the weather changed, the wind was blowing too strong. Okay, let's keep going. Where's some other Arkansas companies we work with or that we know about? Biologics is a preclinical therapeutic development company focused on highly targeted treatments for hair loss and bone disorders. One of my favorite startup stories, because Biologics started out with their technology addressing the problems of that women have after menopause related to osteoporosis, so weak bones. And then through the course of their startup life, the journey they were on, they learned from a new CEO that in order for them to grow, their customer, the person that they were the people that they assumed were their customers, became a different set of customers. It became investors who would be more willing to invest in Biologics as a company for what their therapeutic did for hair loss, because alopecia, hair loss, was a bigger market and it was more investable for the investors, for the venture capital crew. So they learned that their real customer at that stage in their growth were the investors, not the end users that they thought, the patients who had the bone loss, or that they thought they were creating their solution for. So it's a great example of a company that pivoted and that has continued to evolve the value proposition as they've learned what their customer needs. We talked about that earlier. So I see a question in the chat from Philip: where would you recommend B2B software companies look for publicly available market size data to use in making? Okay, Harrison, do you know the answer to that?
So I think the challenge with that is there is some publicly available data on market size for a lot of different industries. So if you just do a search, you'll find a lot of websites that purport to have that information. The challenge is that it never seems, in my experience, those websites never seem to get into very much detail. Again, those are some of the reports, like we mentioned earlier, that will be paywalled and will be several $1,000s usually. So as far as just an easily accessible one, I'm not sure off the top of my head. What we use a lot is called BCC Research. Um, that is a subscription-based service, though. But what we found is BCC Research has been pretty useful and honestly pretty granular in how much detail that they go into for certain industries. And like when we mention market size by application of a certain type of material or something like that, that usually is sourced from BCC Research. I can do some searching and get back with you if I can find something that's more publicly available. Um, but off the top of my head, I can't think of anything that would be very incredibly detailed. Again, there is information out there a lot. Like if you just search blank industry market size, you will get dozens of results that are all kind of the same thing. There's a company out there that produces this report, and then it's kind of like they have almost like shell websites with the same text on it trying to sell you that report. So that's most of what comes up. Unfortunately, I think a lot of things are behind subscriptions or behind paywalls. But I'll do some more searching around and see if there is anything that would be just like 100% accessible.
This would be one of those examples too, Philip, where like Harrison and I might ask you to iterate, like you said, software companies, but what are we talking about? Are we talking about software as a service companies? Are we talking about, are we talking about software development companies? There are lots of different, pieces of that software company puzzle. And we just need to understand specifically what we're looking for. And obviously, some of those things fit under a big umbrella, but then it also helps us to start to drill down, like I was talking about earlier, sometimes we start with really big information and then we get more granular, or we get mid-sized companies, or we are able to regionalize it better, because if you're talking about TAM, SAM, and SOM, you're also wanting to narrow down, like SOM in particular, you're looking at geography and realistically where you can apply your resources or direct your sales to acquire those customers. So it helps to keep drilling down and narrowing that scope, if that makes sense. Do we have any more slides after this? So other ideas of value prop. Oh yeah. One of my favorites are the girls at Smart Reproduction in Jonesboro. They produce viable embryos for sheep and goat implantation. And they're not just helping, producers of sheep and goat stock. They're not just helping local people, they're doing this internationally. And they have just gone after their first SBIR in January. They got a positive response and they just answered the NSF's additional questions. So we hope that means they're getting funded. But they're looking at a new technology to support, without giving it away because our client information is confidential, but they're looking at a new technology partnering with a research group that can help them obtain a new level of detail about the embryos that they didn't have until they applied the tech. So as a supplier of germplasm to the international market that is interested in sheep and goat production, which by the way, we've done the market research about the size of the small ruminant market internationally, because you're looking at consumption patterns, right? You're looking at how lamb and what do we call goat meat? The meat consumption from small ruminants is growing as a specialty food item all over the globe. And of course, it's very popular in certain cultures that already prefer those meats. And so as you're producing the animals and the high quality animals and the high quality meat and the production of all of that for an international market, you want to reduce the costs and reduce the variables as part of that supply chain. So their new technology is actually helping reduce some of the variables that are costly. And it's a great value proposition, but that's not on the website because that's a new product line, a new service that they are trying to develop under the auspices of the seed funding for the federal government. So, just so you know, I mean, a lot of times we're helping you develop your value proposition because it is a whole new idea or in addition to a product line. And these guys are not a startup necessarily. They are a company that's already actively in this business, but using our support, our ecosystem in Arkansas to help them grow or scale in these new areas, these new deliverables, these new offerings to new segments of clients that they hadn't been able to reach before because they've got a new offering. They've got an idea about how to do it. They have an idea about who the customers are, and they have an idea about how to reach them because they already have a lot of the relationships established because they've been in business for 15 years or something like that. So anyway, just to make a point, these are some of the ones that you might learn from in Arkansas. Okay, I think we're close to the end of our. Oh, and we referenced the lean canvas earlier, and so we are going to talk about that on May 2nd, but I just wanted to throw up one version of it where we have talked a little bit about the value proposition in these customer segments. So we were talking earlier about the one pager that helps you plan, and for those of you who are students still, or if you're looking at learning more about this, we would love to be able to work with you one-on-one on some of the actual digging down into the details of a lean canvas, or helping you, like we said earlier, about deep dive with a class that can help teach this, because there are some accelerator programs or cohorts that can help you learn to use these tools. And so taking the time to really answer the questions, to document your answers, to discuss them with your team, and to investigate the additional information that you need to be able to do this planning. This is business planning. So in order to be able to do these pieces of the business planning, you really have to delve down into the information. You just don't just wander into it. It takes intention, it takes the tools, it takes practice, and it takes reaching out to other people to get the information you don't have. Okay, that's all I wanted to say, is just introduce the Lean Canvas. And we'll talk about that on May 2nd a little bit more if you want to come to that webinar. And then some helpful resources that, like I said earlier, you get copies of the slides, and all of the slides that we've referenced today, because we'll share the slides, you have access to the links and can investigate some of the links on your own. We're happy to supply that. We'd also encourage you to join our email list. I believe that QR code still goes, or if you want to join the email list, from the URL, you'll have it when we send it to you in the email, the follow-up email. And then also I pointed out, you should select technology if you're interested in my newsletter, the Lab to Launch newsletter, because we have other email lists. We have other, we have segments, we have customer segments, and we send different communications to our different segments. So mine, if you're interested in technology in particular, select that option. Attend future events. All you have to remember is asbtdc.org/events. You don't even have to remember the dash, just type in events after the slash and it'll take you to that page. And then also, if you are a current client, we encourage you to reconnect with your current consultant, or every once in a while we'll ask you to update your eCenter. It's called eCenter, is our system that updates your client record, because you need to be a client to work with us. For us to be able to provide any of this information or any of these deliverables we've talked about, you have to be an active client and you need to be actively pursuing your small business. So we'll share that link so you can make sure you keep your account current. And here's the next webinar that I was talking about. We're calling it the second part of Who's Your Customer, a Lean Canvas Primer. Just to understand a little bit more about that Lean Canvas model, the one pager, and that Tim was talking about, that is so easy to use and so valuable that fourth graders can figure it out. But it's important to do the work. You can't just look at it. You have to do the work and fill it out. So we're happy to share some of our templates with you and let you start working on some of the things on your own if you want to. And also we can talk about additional market research. We want to try to keep these conversations interactive. And like all of our events, it's free and registration is required. And I think, this is just my final slide. The Lab to Launch newsletter, again, that's monthly. We'll tell you what upcoming funding opportunities, what solicitations are open regarding, in particular, America's Seed Fund. If we have a cohort or an accelerator opportunity, we will promote that. There are 2 going on right now. The Lab to Launch that is available right now. If you're interested in that, there's an application process for that. So email me after you get my email in the follow-up and let me know if you're interested in that one. Or we have in particular, we have a USDA Lab to Launch cohort coming up in the summer to help prepare applicants who know they are SBIR potential and who want to fill out their application and do it sort of under the guise of our cohort by the USDA's deadline, September 17th. So we're holding a class so you can get your application done in lockstep with other people who agree to be peers in that process, and everybody's working on their own submission, and they're not competitive. There's plenty of room for everybody, but we ask that, if you join that cohort, that of course we can ask people to sign NDAs to protect the ideas, but to also be willing to share, because the whole value of a cohort is to learn together and from one another. So we do have at least one accelerator for USDA SBIR coming up in the summer. And then we have other trainings. We're happy to entertain any ideas for trainings that you'd like to have that you don't currently see on our website. So send those to me if you feel like you need them, or you want one of us, whether it's me or somebody else, to show up and just hold the workshop. send us your ideas, because we have a lot of business topics that we can cover. The networking connections and events, we just had meet the funders through the road tour. We had 11 federal agencies here 2 weeks ago, and we had a great opportunity for our entrepreneurs to meet one-on-one with them to talk about their projects and to talk about whether it's a good fit for SBIR funding. So we hold those events. And also I will say the feedback I got from the road tour in particular was we had one workshop after the federal funders did their gig in the morning. We had one panel of local entrepreneurs who talked about their own experiences. And I got so much feedback from attendees about how they wish we had more of those, because you're talking to people who've been there and done that, and who've given their real life experience about what they encountered, both with their early seed funding or their partners, or having to pivot in their companies, or addressing these things that they didn't know were going to happen when they started their journey as a small business owner. And it was really, really valuable. Okay, what else? That's it. So I guess in the minute we have left, I want to thank you for your sitting through a whole long 2-hour discussion where we did kind of wander a little bit, meander. We finally got on topic and then had everybody here. So I hope that you got something of value out of it, even though it was a little bit of a rocky start. And also to please email me, or you can email Harrison directly if you have a particular research question. If you want to get set up as a client and you're not already a client, please email me directly. If you have, again, if you have suggestions for training or other topics that you're interested in, or how to connect with the ecosystem, I'm happy to coach you, guide you through some of these processes. And I see that Pam is here, and I'll be working with Pam Kaler at UAMS to help some of the make some of the connections for some of the researchers and students at UAMS. So if y'all have any particular questions or interest in any of these, like we just barely touched the surface of some of these topics today. So if there's something you'd like to drill down on, or you would like to have me and or Harrison come over and walk you through a few things, we'd be happy to do that as well. We just want to make, our whole goal in life is to help you make new connections for new information and support and relationships that will drive your business and your ability to operate that business successfully in the state of Arkansas. So that said, does anybody have any final questions? Comments? All right, thank you everybody for coming, and we appreciate your attention and your participation. And I see a clap came up. I'm not sure how that happened. Thank you. Technology, we're learning how to host these webinars. So thank you again so much for attending. I hope it was helpful. So you'll get a copy of the recording of the video presentation, the actual video, and also the slides with all the links and our contact information, obviously. And if I don't have your contact information, please do email me and make sure that I have